everybody, this is Chris Brandt here with another Future Podcast. The way companies go to market these days has changed drastically. Social media and on-demand video has given rise to content marketing and account-based marketing initiatives. Getting yourself out there is more important than ever, but what if you don't have all the skills to do it? Fortunately, there is Bunny Studios to connect you with the right kind of talent for your brand. Today, we're talking with Santiago Jaramillo, CEO of Bunny Studios, about how to produce the kind of content that gets seen, filling in that gap between vetted creatives and business. Welcome, Santiago.
Chris, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Business has changed drastically, right? I mean, people now are finding themselves that the go-to-market revolves around a lot of, content production and on-demand kind of video and on-demand kind of things rather than, the old style of, the traveling salesman with the suitcase, right? Can you tell me about how you saw that market changing and, why you created Bunny Studios for that?
So that's a great question. And we've been running a company for about 11 years now, which is quite a long time to be on the market. And a couple of things that we saw back in the day is there were a lot of people looking for creators. Think about voice actors, videographers, editors. And if you still put yourself 10 or 15 years ago, it was very hard to get a flexible contract in place.
Right.
So you either hire it in-house or you go to an agency, and the agency would have a massive process to get you on board and would actually ask you for a lot of commitment. What we ended up doing is finding a couple of use cases that made sense in the market and would actually fit that on-demand aspect of connecting creators and businesses. And then many years ago, we started with voiceovers and ended up expanding to many other areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, because I talk to people all the time because, obviously I've got this podcast and, people are always saying, oh, I got to do a podcast. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I'm like, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do video. I don't know how to do audio. I don't know, and I sound terrible and I'm awkward. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah,
That happens.
yes, I agree with you. You got to do all those things, but you don't have to do it all yourself, right?
Correct.
And so one of the things that you've done is you've created this platform that brings together sort of the gig economy creators in a really highly vetted way to really help them interact with the enterprise and for brands to put together their messaging.
And then think about three different use cases, but potentially let's start with the vetting and the quality aspect, which if you go today to the market, you're going to find different ways in which you can find a freelancer. And you're going to get signals into how to work with that freelancers. But maybe you find the right freelancer and that freelancer is not available for you at that specific moment in time, or is not going to be available whenever your ongoing work is going to happen. And that's very important for an enterprise customer to have that predictability. So again, enterprise always gets late to many of the waves. And one of that in terms of freelancing and connecting creators in this case, they always have that aspect of I need predictability and I need quality. And going through the time of either filtering or building a database or actually coordinating the work, it's quite consuming. And that's a bit of one of the elements where we stepped in and said, hey, you're always going to have a vetted crowd of creators that are going to be able to work with you on 1 to thousands of projects in a short period of time. And moreover, we'll always guarantee availability. So you'll have your squad or you'll always be working on demand with the specific creators. But if something goes wrong, we'll back you up so your system does not break. And that system predictability is very important for these customers.
Yeah, I like that because, so many times, first of all, businesses, it's like one of the first things that gets cut is marketing budgets, right?
Yeah.
And so they don't have it, and they don't want necessarily full-time staff to do that. But, but we're seeing a different kind of creator now too. Because we've seen this rise of content marketing and account-based marketing and things like that, right? Can you speak to a little bit about how marketing has changed?
Oh, well, that's a very big question in terms of what has happened into the market. But I'll do my best to address it.
But in general, how it's changed.
Yeah. I think there are two things that comes to me when it comes to marketing and content creation. One, I think this has been going on for the last couple of years, where there's an expectation from brands to be more close to the end customer. So they're not independent individuals selling or producing something, but there's a persona and a set of values that they represent. And then how do you communicate that message? Well, you're managing quite a different pipeline of customers today, because you're engaging, let's start with the latest, Gen Z, which is consuming media in a very unique way, fast way. They are quite fast in understanding either they believe or they don't believe a brand. And then you have to be assertive to the message. But then you're also addressing millennials like myself, which have a different time of consumption. You do your research, you spend some time, and then you sending two different messages, and then there are different generations they're still addressing, and you have to build and repurpose your content that fits all of these different audiences, depending on what you're selling, of course. But then that repurposing, when you think again about content creation and content repurposing, could be quite expensive to do. And if you actually have the flexibility to actually go around and how do I get one piece of information, one message that I can actually transcreate to different audiences very quickly, there's a lot of value in that. And that's potentially the pressure that marketing has, which is, hey, who am I talking to? I have 3 different set of customers. That's going to take me a long time to actually build messaging, cost projects to communicate to them. That's where the speed and the engagement and flexibility goes around.
Back in the day, because I'm Gen X, so we're going to go way back now. We would see people handing out folders with sell sheets in them and things like that. That was sort of marketing in the day, right? Yeah. And we saw, advertisements in, trade publications and, newspapers and things like that, right? I mean, so we've come a long way, right? And we've got this content marketing thing now where the objective seems to sort of establish a brand and and create an emotional connection with a brand, while at the same time providing information to the market in a way that doesn't get too salesy, right? Because we were always very salesy back in the day, and that was, turned a lot of people off. But now it's more about, this content piece and making, content that's engaging. And not only that, but you have to compete with an enormous amount of content now. Right? It's not just like, you're the only game in town. So, here it goes. You're like up against the world globally, right? That's got to pose a lot of interesting challenges, right?
I can think about actually 2 examples. One of them that I've always followed, and I think they're still relevant in how they approach that brand creation and engagement with consumers, which is Airbnb. They've built a massive connection on the concept of belonging. So if you're traveling and you're staying in homes, and they're really good at communicating that aspect, and then you have that component where it's built on what's the brand going to represent and how we're going to engage that emotional connection with our end customers. And then you have the second more tactical aspect, which is, hey, I get the brand and I get what we're going to be doing. How fast can we deploy experiments, and how fast can we actually understand from 100 experiments that we might be running, or 10 if we're smaller companies, but if I have 10 experiments, which ones are working and which ones are not? And the speed at which we're working is, you can have on year 1 experiment that works and it's fantastic and it grows and it's giving you results, but it's going to last 8 months. So you either wait until month 8 to actually change what you're working on, or you're working in a set of experiments. So whenever that experiment that it was working on initially is not working anymore, then you're running a few others that actually connect to. And I think we all live in that. It's a lot of information, and it's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of expectation to whomever is selling anything. And then you get market signals, and then you get today's economy where no one can understand where we are at or not. And then you're competing with that idea of, are people buying? Are people not buying? Why are people stopping spending money? And how long is this going to last? Right. That's quite a lot of pressure from marketing or a creative team to actually sell, communicate, and then you get a lot of pressures. But yeah.
There's so many more channels now for people to pursue. There's Facebook, YouTube, podcasts, there's, social media content. There's all kinds of, different go-to-markets now. Can you talk to how that complexity factors into all of this?
The way that we do it at Bunny Studio, and I see a lot of customers going through it, it's at the end of the day, you have different channels that are really good for some of your products. A lot of companies are multi-products. So you have another matrix combination where you have to understand what channel fits the product that you're selling, because think about it for a second, you can have a really good search engine optimization effort for product A, but that search engine optimization effort does not work for product B for different reasons, and they're within the same company. So you have to be very assertive on understanding the combination of the channel that you're putting in place and the product that you're selling. And of course, then it goes to monetization of how you're monetizing that product that makes into the channel that you're connecting it to.
Right.
But then you build the way that we do it, and I've seen companies do it, is you build a crazy matrix, reasonable to digest, but quite complex, because it's complexity what you're addressing here. It will not be lean to that extent. But then you understand the multiple channels that you either have running or are going to be experimenting with. And then you combine it with the product, or the way that we do it is you have to combine it with the product. And the challenging thing is, what do you prioritize when you have this matrix in place?
Right.
You can add any prioritization framework that your company uses, or a lot of companies use different ways of approaching it. And then you experiment with search engine optimization, or you do sales, which also might not be a marketing, but it's a channel on its own. You can think about referrals, you can think about social media, and then you break it into what social media. Like I've seen companies today that are not active in Instagram or Facebook, but are very, very successful on TikTok. And they do it very well there. So you have to break it into the nitty gritty of every detail, connect it to the products that you're selling. And ideally, you have the capacity to run a bunch of experiments at the same time, control the channels and the product combination that are working for your company, and expect that within 18 months, 36 months, that combination will not work anymore. Because it's changing so fast that something that you discovered 18 months ago and you're very happy, there's reason to believe that 18 months on the line will not have the same effect. So it's an absurd combination of channels, product monetization, prioritization, and being able to run a lot of experiments at the same time. And then it goes, how do you do that? Flexibility gives a lot of capacity to test all of this.
And I know one of the problems I see so many businesses struggling with, and so many individuals struggling with, right? Because a lot of people are trying to personally brand as well, is the tone. They miss the tone. They don't get the, like producing the writing that kind of content, and producing it in a way that resonates with the audience is really tricky. And I think a lot of people think they can just go off and do it, but they miss the mark. And like I said, it's such a competitive space. You can't, come to that game without, your A game, right?
This is very funny. I'm not an active social media user per se, but I was very funny. We were talking with someone last week, and they were telling me, do you know about the Millennial Silence? And I'm like, I don't know what's the Millennial Silence. I don't know, Chris, are you aware that what's the Millennial? So allegedly, and they shared with me a couple of videos, every time you record a video for social media, millennials tend to do a pause before they actually record. So they do like a millisecond pause, and then they say, so this is going to be the video about. And that's allegedly, that's a joke within Gen Z on its own. Like, why are you pausing and not getting into the video directly? And why are you not doing what it is? And it goes back again into, who are you addressing the message to? Because most likely, if I'm a millennial and you do that, I will not notice. But if it's Gen Z, they're going to laugh. And allegedly, it's a joke on its own as it goes. I'm thinking about social media. So again, who are you addressing the conversation to? And being very assertive on understanding how they communicate and how do they engage. Because again, we're not all selling to Gen Z. Eventually we will, but potentially you're not doing it today. So potentially, if you're, depending on who you're selling, if you're selling to a corporation whose decision makers are not in social media, it doesn't matter if you're building or not building TikTok content. You're still building content in a different format that connects and resonates to that decision maker. So who are you addressing this to? What problem are you solving?
Yeah.
And again, if you're doing corporate, why would you be doing TikTok on the first place? Potentially. Hopefully you have audiences in different age groups, and they're going to say, how does he says that everyone should be on TikTok? But I would be a very, very assertive in saying, well, if I'm selling to Fortune, not only 500, but 100 companies, those deals are massive and they take months. And they're thinking about a lot of different things. TikTok might be fun to see, but that might not be the channel that they're going to be engaging and purchasing after.
There's that agility aspect of it, like being able to turn things around quickly to respond to, market changes and events. And I think that is a good segue to talk about why you should hire professionals to right? Who know what they're doing and who've been through it, right?
And again, I think it goes when we talk about flexibility, it always goes around. I think the biggest challenge is, and we talked about a minute ago, is are they going to is the flexibility structure going to be predictable? Is the flexibility structure going to have quality? And then you really want to partner with people that gives you the capacity of potentially having one or two people or a couple of people in-house in your team that give the direction of the creative aspect and potentially solve and discover those questions about who are we addressing, what's the job to be done that we're going to be solving. And then you get a group of flexible creators that can move at the speed, either grow or downgrade during specific waves of the economy to actually get your content in place. The way that we've seen it, it's quite powerful. And in a lot of our customers, we have customers that build a lot of complex solutions that otherwise would be very difficult to build on their own. We do add a layer of technology, and if that can actually help you solve what you're doing, leveraging technology is an incredible element to achieve this. Either that's a company or a platform like Bunny Studio, or a tool like Airtable, or you are working on Asana and you really focus on building your system and your workflow so that layer of technology adds the value. But if you're doing this, I can only imagine email-based or even a Slack-based, that's going to be extremely difficult.
Well, and one other thing that I think that's interesting, you guys focus on, I mean, you're kind of a premium fulfillment platform. This is not like Fiverr where you're just getting random people off the street that are coming in. These are all fully vetted people.
Correct.
Could you talk about how you select people, how people are positioned on the platform?
Definitely. So a couple of things about Bunny Studio. Bunny is a global product on its own, meaning we not only serve customers in the United States, but we also serve customers that are in Germany, might be in the UK, might be in Singapore, might be in Brazil. And not only that, but we have a combination of customers that are global customers that might be in Brazil that are expanding to the United States. So they're tapping from Brazil going to the United States, or we've seen companies from the United States going to Germany. And then that cultural aspect, that's another layer of the vetting process, which I'll go into. So depending on the vetting creator, depending on the vetting layer that we are working on, we vet in two things. We vet for technical requirements. So if it's a voiceover, they have to match specific technical requirements on the production. If they're designers, they have to match certain technical requirements that we also look into. The same goes for videographers and others. So they go into a vetting technical process before they can participate in the product or in the platform. And then we add a layer of demographics assertiveness. And that goes into if you are a Hindi voiceover, or you're a Hindi voiceover from India, or you're a Hindi voiceover from Pakistan. Because there's a cultural difference. And if someone in the United States, it's buying content and they're looking into a Hindi producer, it's not the same having one person from India than having a person from Pakistan. And if you're creating design and you're addressing the Brazilian market, you don't want to have an American designer using Google Translate or anything to create design content for the Brazilian market. So we add a layer of a demographic vetting that whenever a client of ours is expanding to other markets, we not only give them a sense of relief with the technical aspect, but they also get a sense of relief on acquiring services from someone that is from the market that I'm targeting, I'm creating content to. That's extremely valuable.
I just want to underline, how important international markets are right now, because if you are not marketing to the international market, you're really missing out, because there is so much activity happening in places around the world that, have been historically underserved, especially by the American market.
What's happening in a lot of developing markets, I believe it's less than a month ago, the first time that you and I, Chris, talked behind the scenes, I think that a month ago, India was the second country with more population. Today is the first country with largest population in the world. That's happening in the last 4 weeks. And that's happening quite fast. And those demographic changes, there's a lot of opportunities if one understands that aspect and actually can build. And if your product has the capacity to be sold in this market, there are a lot of products that cannot. But if your product has a capacity, there's a lot of opportunities to discover here.
So tell me about the platform itself, because this is, like I said, this is not like Fiverr or things like that, or this is like if you're operating with this sort of simplicity of Uber, but with the talent of a New York ad agency.
Think about the following, and I use this analogy. Well, many years ago, I used to play with this analogy, which is if you go to eBay in the early 2000s. what you were getting from eBay was a lot of signals that let you know who was the seller and what you could expect from that selling experience. And then whatever you buy, it was up to you from the seller and the buyer to coordinate that experience. And if everything goes well, you can actually add more signals. And if everything goes wrong, well, bad luck, leave a signal. And then Amazon stepped in and played the game of, well, we're going to play fulfillment, meaning it doesn't matter who the buyer is acquiring something from, like acquiring whatever they're buying, will always guarantee that you're going to receive what you buy. And if there's an inconvenience in the process, Amazon will step in and solve it for you. And I'm sure everyone that is listening, or even yourself, you had that experience where, hey, things didn't go well, and they step in and solve it. That's the analogy that we did with an open marketplace of freelancers, and actually adding a layer of technology that fulfills projects. So what we do at Bunny Studio is we build modules of creators that have different skill sets, and as I was mentioning, different demographics, characteristics, and then we let customers buy projects on different fields, and depending on what they're buying, that layer of technology that plays in between just taps into those bundles and access the skill set and the demographic that a client is buying. So they're not coordinating via email, they're not coordinating via messages. They buy a project as you would be purchasing anything on Amazon, and then in a very fast time frame, delivery time, they get the asset that they were buying, and everything happens smoothly for the end buyer. That's where we add the value for, and that's a bit of what we're doing. This works in two areas. One, it allows you to actually buy something as straightforward as a logo, and a lot of this is one of the most use cases of design. Give me a logo for my company. That's very straightforward. You can actually submit your input, go through the layer, access the designers, and then you get it back. But it can allow you as well for different use cases to acquire 1,500 voiceovers every 7 days in more than 50 languages. And you just somehow provide those 1,500 projects that you need. The technology layers coordinate all those creators that need to be ready to work. And then all of those projects are delivered at the same time with the same quality without interfering with the expectation or the predictability. That's where the technology component plays a key game into what we add.
Creating multilingual content is something I've always wanted to do, but the logistics behind it are just
correct,
so difficult. And it's not like, you have to create content in a lot of different languages. And like you said, I think it's a really interesting the way, like Spanish in, Colombia is going to be very different than Spanish in Costa Rica or in, like Spain or, so you have to get, localized resources for, it's not just like you said, it's not just one Hindi market. There's multiple Hindi markets, and you have to have voiceovers for those, right? Correct. So there's complexity within the complexity on this that I don't even think people consider.
But there are customers that do. There are certain type of customers that do consider those complexities, and a solution like Bunny Studio is very important for their specific use cases.
Right. Well, I mean, and you guys work for some really big customers too, right? I mean, I don't know if you can talk about any of them, but I know you got some big deals with.
Yeah, we have a couple of really good companies. So we have a couple of different areas. We work with a lot of Salesforce, for example. We do for them a lot of education content that we support. We do work with a lot of agencies that we don't normally that we're not allowed to brand. But we work with a lot of agencies behind the scenes, and they are selling the premium creative aspect. We support their creative output in that regard. We work with HubSpot in creating, we support part of their podcast network that they have. So we do a lot of work behind the scenes for them. And all in all, we work with somewhere around 5,500 customers on a yearly basis. That's our customer pool, from long-tail customers to enterprise customers all the way.
So, I mean, you're working with big customers. One of the things that's interesting that I keep hearing in the industry now is that all these people are going to go away because ChatGPT 4 is here, and you've got Midjourney here. So artificial intelligence is sort of taking over the game, and so now you don't need people, right? Well, I just tried to do some things in Adobe's Firefly, and it's cool, but people come out looking with thumbs in the middle of their head and things like that, and they got 6 to 40 fingers.
Yeah,
So it's not quite perfect yet.
correct. It's not quite perfect, but it's quite close.
Right.
And I think everyone is expecting on what's going to happen and how the output is going to look like. I was reading a few days ago. So there's a subreddit that talks about jobs that ChatGPT 3.4 is already killing, if I may use that word.
Hmm.
And it's quite a challenging, confronting subreddit because you do still today find a lot of the, you're finding people in a specific creative jobs that are being let go. So that's already happening, specifically on the writing field.
Mm.
So writing copy for products. So if you're advertising your product, and these were professionals that were working full time in a company writing specs about products, they're being let go allegedly, and
Mm.
that's not in the future. That's happening today, and you can find their
Yeah.
experiences in that subreddit, and it's crazy. But when you think about the greater scale, I think there are potentially three outcomes. One, there are a lot of roles that are facing an existential threat, if you may think about it, specifically today on rating capabilities. I think a lot of companies are going to take the decision either going very generic, which is what most likely ChatGPT 4 is going to be providing an output for. If you have the same question, you're going to have the same answer. And there are companies that are willing to make that trade off today versus
Hmm.
companies that will value the craft of being unique and actually having human creativity behind the scenes of what they're doing. If you're writing a script of a movie and you pitch the same movie to ChatGPT 4, you're going to get the same output. And if you think about cinema, there are many different stories about similar aspects of life that have been told in so different ways, and that's what makes cinema so rich. That's most likely what is going to make writing survive and thrive in the long term. The second aspect is there are a lot of other areas that AI is playing with, like design or even voice. And what we've seen, this is what we've seen today. We've seen customers drafting projects with AI to speed up the communication process with their
Yeah.
designer or their video producer.
Yeah.
And that's a quite interesting aspect. Because then what you're doing is it builds a saving time on project drafting, or project briefing, which can be very lengthy depending on what someone is building. And that's a very interesting use case. And then it goes into the third aspect, which is I like to believe, and I believe that for a big part of the market, it will be blended. So there will be a blending between what humans can do in the creative component and what AI can do in the creative component.
Hmm.
And that blending of what can AI speed up and what can humans craft and connect is going to be very powerful. Because again, the world that we live in, the last 70 years of world that has been developed, it's all about efficiencies, and that efficiencies has a price, have a price in the market, and that's where a lot of value is. So the blending component is where I believe the market is going to go.
I agree with you. I think AI is a tremendous tool to use, but I don't think it's going to replace people yet. I mean, because I work with ChatGPT 4 a lot, and
Mhm,
it can produce serviceable content, but
mhm,
it's not going to produce really high quality content. It's like
correct.
the more I use it, the more I can tell it's something that ChatGPT 4 produced. It's sort of
Mhm,
like the uncanny valley. They talk about
correct.
in CGI, and like when CGI first hit the market, we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? And then we look back at some of those early efforts now, and we're like, wow, that was really not very good. But at the time, it
Correct.
looked really good. And I think ChatGPT 4 is very similar to that right now. It's like
Correct.
it kind of looks good initially, but after you see it a few more times, you're like, yeah, it's kind of, and then it's making stuff up a lot of times because it's generative, and you
Correct.
like you got to spend a lot of time vetting the things that it writes. So there's a give and take there. It's not a perfect solution. And I will say, like, I use a ton of AI in video and image processing,
Mhm,
but like Midjourney's cool and Adobe Firefly is cool and all that. But like I said, like people end up having 6 to 10 fingers on things, or maybe 3, and there's a little dystopian weird. I mean, I guess if you're selling hallucinogens, it's the perfect vehicle for that. But
Potentially, the way that I think about it, it's It's the job to be done. What's the
Right.
job to be done? In certain jobs to be done, they might be faster to replace it than others. And if you think, for example, and some of the others would be advertising and marketing. If you want to be assertive in the Brazilian market, or you want to be assertive in the East Coast versus the West Coast, or I don't know, Canada, Toronto, and you want to be assertive on the language you're communicating, you want to be assertive on the slang that they use in these different regions, it's going to be taking a long time for a solution to or an AI solution to be either assertive on the cultural context of that specific region, or it could take a long time still to train a voice, for example, that is going to work for Newcastle accent, Manchester accent, London accent, and then you go to Scottish accent. Not impossible in a very long term, but quite expensive to develop, that even the investment on connecting with humans makes it even more reasonable today.
It's a really amazing tool, and it's got incredible potential, but I
Correct.
still think it needs to be driven. It's not a creative. It's like a car that somebody
Correct.
needs to drive.
When I think like we're exposed to all the things that are happening in the AI on the creatives here because they're very fun and easy to share, but really where the money and the AI development is happening and will have a crazy impact is in logistics. That's where
yes.
the big money of the world is. And if you can build efficiencies with AI in logistics, that's the biggest sector in the world that is going to be disrupted over the next 10 years. You don't get to see a beautiful picture to share on TikTok or on Instagram about what was the logistic piece that they disrupted. But for the next 10 years, they're going to be disrupting a lot of logistic industries. And that's going to add a lot of value to the market. And it's going to have a lot of issues with a lot of people that are going to have to re-understand what they're going to be doing in the market.
We live in interesting times.
Yeah. So many things in the last 70 years.
One thing you mentioned, advertising, because I think like placements that's a big place we're seeing a lot of AI in, like, for example, YouTube, or Google Ads. And the one thing I find that's really interesting about that is like, you have to really understand what underneath the hood is happening. Because, if you say, hey, I want to run an ad that's going to get me subscribers, right? What they're going to do is it's going to go out and do exactly that. But that's not necessarily going to go find you subscribers that like what you're doing. That's just going to go find people who are prone to hit the subscribe button, right? And that's a very different thing, right?
Correct.
So that said, where you go from here? Like, what's next for Bunny Studios?
I think the two things that we're working on in that regard is we continue to expand market. There's a big internalization component to what we're doing in a lot of the development markets where we think we can actually add value. And then the second thing on research and development that we are actually working in is that blending component. So over the last couple of months, we've actually deployed a couple of AI products that are part of our fulfillment workflow on the creative aspect. And I think that we're going to be working on that research part is how do we keep connecting AI models? Either we connect them that are available in the market, or that we can straightforward build that can actually add value either to the logistic process again of courting a large crowd, or speeding up the creative output of specific elements, and then allowing customers to find a blending option that is not either low quality AI that has no idea what they're doing, or potentially high premium human solutions. But if we can build an in-between solution, it might be an interesting path for us. And that's a bit of what we're playing with today.
If people were looking to get started with you guys, where should they go?
They should go to bunnystudio.com. That's the most straightforward place to find, and they're going to be able to understand their offering. They're going to be able to understand what we're connecting. And if you're a creator, you can actually go to the same website, bunnystudio.com. And they will actually be able to understand how to apply and join the crowd if they're looking for that.
It's been great talking to you. I think this is great stuff, of which I could probably use some myself, some additional help. So I'll have to dig in there and see what I can find. But hey, good luck with everything.
Thank you.
And look forward to seeing all the great things you guys produce.
Thank you, Chris. It was very fun. It was a very nice conversation. I love the energy. I wish you the best in your journey as well with your podcast.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you could, please click on that subscribe button. And I will see you in the next one.